Joe, hi there.
Dana, how are you today? Are you excited?
I'm,
We've got a wonderful event, I think, right? Yeah?
I'm so excited. This is our first CFIN members only experience. We've got an hour of dynamic conversation with three super smart people who are reinventing how consumers get food into their homes.
Oh, it's great. And I'm really pleased that our CFIN members will get a chance to listen to yourself, Khalil, Kris, and Matthieu, who have, I'm sure, some very interesting discussions for us today.
Yeah, and speaking of members, thank you so much for being here, everyone. We've got 1 hour of action-packed time planned for you. This is the first of a series of CFIN experiences that we hope you'll join us for, and it's going to be a great time.
Yeah, I agree. And I think in terms of the timing, Dana, it's never been more timely around this topic. I mean, we live in a dynamic world and it's ever changing for our consumers. And there's so many options. Really, it's almost infinite on how we get our food as a consumer. And I'm really curious to see what the four of you are going to talk about today. It's really intriguing from my perspective.
It truly is. It seems like the more options we have, the more personalized it can be. And that makes it so much harder for businesses to, have one offering. So I'm really excited to hear what our panel has to say to lead us all in thinking in new and innovative ways about how to win in this space.
Yeah, excellent. Well, really, I probably need to get off, Dana, let you guys get on with it because that's what our members are here for. So thanks for all of this. I wish you a wonderful conversation. I'll see you later, Dana. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for popping in. All right, let's get started and take a look at some statistics to frame our conversation. During the pandemic, Canadians bought meal kits galore and have said that they want to continue with the practice going forward. But as much as they love food delivery, they don't like paying for it. Online food orders through apps and other means have never been higher. And as these statistics reveal, shopping's just changed. Not only have the lines between restaurant and grocery store blurred, increasingly often consumers are segmenting their shopping lists. They have categories like online shopping, meal subscriptions, a trip to the club store. One stop is totally out. So here today, to give us the inside scoop on this trend, we have Khalil, CEO of Crafty Ramen, Linney, co-founder of GoodGood, and Matthieu, Vincent, co-founder of Digital Food Lab. Let's bring them in and start our conversation. All right, this is going to be a fantastic conversation, and I want all of the CFIN members who are tuned in to be able to join. So if you can use the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen to share your questions. If time permits, we'll answer as many of them as we can before we end our hour. But let's get right to it because I have a lot to learn from these three fantastic panelists. So panel, polling done in 2020 revealed that about 50% of Canadians intend to continue ordering food in various ways, but about half of those folks don't really want to pay for it or just pay a very small amount. So can businesses like food kits, speedy delivery services, and other types of e-commerce food concepts, can you actually absorb these costs? How are you incorporating these kinds of consumer sentiments into your modeling, and what are you seeing as we around the world to see what our future might hold? Khalil, do you want to kick us off and tell us about how the meal kit subscription business is approaching this problem?
Yeah, most definitely. And thank you, Dana and CFIN, for having us today. Very excited to see where this conversation goes. No doubt, none of us want to pay extra fees whenever we see an extra fee on a bill. Some people, we run away from that transaction. So I think, very similar to how the pizza industry and delivery has operated for ages, it was always cheaper to pick up your pizza, walk-in special. So I think we're going to see a lot of these costs buried inside of the cost of the products and offer free shipping or discounted shipping rates. And as our lives continue to get busier and busier, the convenience factor is not going to go away, especially the meal kit services that are able to provide something different that's difficult to make at home or provides a new experience in your kitchen. Some really interesting data that we saw when early pandemic, when we started doing research for the e-commerce side of our business, was 25% of consumers are more likely to buy online if the product is made or sourced locally, which is one of the big reasons why we have a large focus on local. And we've seen that trend growing over the last few years. We're supposed to see the cook and eat segment of the food industry grow by over 13% compounded annually over the next 7 years. And the North American meal kit market, and this data is from early pandemic days, so it might even be bigger today, it was expected to grow from 2 billion to 5 billion from 2020 to 2025. So we're seeing some strong growth even as we exit the pandemic, and it'll be interesting to see how we all work around these increasing costs. And it's so different than the extreme cost pressures on restaurants today.
Yeah, and I suppose with that kind of growth, the economies of scale will kick in as well and be a bit of a benefit. So Kris, you've been reinventing the cafe experience and integrating experiential elements and online delivery and all kinds of, it's a real hybrid that you're creating with GoodGood. How are you responding to these consumer needs?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for inviting us to the chat today. It's excited to be here. I think for us, the way that we look at it is really trying to diversify our revenue channels to ensure that we're offsetting costs. So the concept like GoodGood, it's critical for us that we enable customers to either visit our cafes by walking in, place an order ahead, or place a delivery order. I think we can also look at different channels as potential loss leaders to drive acquisition. So, if a customer is only ordering delivery and our business becomes heavily delivery, it's difficult to make those margins work, as you kind of mentioned. The beauty of our model is that we are heavily a cafe first. And so really driving adoption through people walking in and having an experience at the cafe allows us to do that. And, similar to Khalil's business, Crafty Ramen, we have amazing places where you can hang out, enjoy an experience, but you can also get the meal kit at home. And I think that's super powerful. And, just touching on the delivery component, I think there'll be a lot of creativity there. I mean, you're starting to see it with a lot of the kind of marketplace companies, but, batch ordering and things like that to drive more profitable economics is also an opportunity, or, giving people free delivery if they hit specific basket sizes. So I think there'll continue to be, innovation there and really ability to come up with interesting concepts that maybe aren't even in the market yet today.
Interesting. Yeah, great comments. So Matthieu, you're dialing in from France today. You have a global perspective. When you hear what these gentlemen are seeing here in Canada, what do you think? Are we on the right track? Do you see better models? Is this typical?
I would say first that when we talk about food delivery right now, what we can just say is that it's kind of a mess. We don't really know where it is going because we've seen so much investment. Just give you a quick figure, globally, the overall food tech ecosystem. So all the startups working around food have raised around 50-60 billion. It's 3 times more than in 2020. And I would say that 80% of that money is going into food delivery. So it's a huge amount of money that is going into new space, especially more and more into grocery delivery. And so I would say what we are seeing right now is, I would say, a time of reckoning. We need indeed to have startups and companies that are going more and more profitable, because some of them are old. Money is going to be rarer for them for a lot of reasons. And so we will see new, as Kris mentioned, more innovative models. As Khalil mentioned, we also see the need for convenience to be priced at some point. So both these themes are, I would say, in the air. But what I would say, and what I think which is really interesting, is that grocery delivery startups, notably, are being able to be profitable and at the same time to offer the same prices as stores, because they are not just recreating the model, they are reinventing it. And so that's maybe the point where you have had in the past startups just copying or adding a level of delivery onto a business model. Right now, you have more and more companies recreating from scratch all the business model in order to deliver. And there you can find the 20+ % that are lacking to manage delivery fee.
Interesting. Yeah, great comments. And there is just so much investment in this space, but there's also, folks who are just, just pivoting during the pandemic and, shifting to these sort of grocerant kind of concepts. Khalil, Crafty Ramen, really quickly out of the gate came from, having, 2 noodle bars to having gorgeous packaging, branding, fantastic customer experience. You're just on the forefront of this trend. So, how did that happen, and how were you able to make that pivot so quickly and so effectively?
Yeah, thanks, Dana. I'll give you a little bit of background. So I joined Crafty Ramen after my co-founders, Jared and Mickey, opened our first restaurant downtown Guelph. I joined about a year after, and we opened our second location downtown Kitchener with the intent to really grow a restaurant chain, as I have a bit of franchise background. 4 months after we opened, pandemic hit, and we're stuck with this big, beautiful, brand new empty restaurant. So like you mentioned, lots of other restaurant owners, we needed to figure out different ways to create revenue, but really try and bring that Crafty Ramen experience home to our customers. So we started creating ramen meal kits on a local level, and just brown boxes, no branding. And at the time, we were only able to make 100 or 200, and we would put them up on our website for sale. We were seeing them sell out in minutes, and the demand was amazing. And we would have people messaging us from all over the country asking if we could ship the product. So it was really the customer demand that drove us to start pivoting into e-commerce. So we took a few months, built the website, got the branding and the packaging, and launched in December of 2020. And it's been a really cool journey ever since to really grow this, and all the new technologies and the Shopifys of the world and our last mile delivery partner really enabled us to create this without having a huge background in e-commerce. And from there, we started to get some really cool organic grocery requests, like Kris and his team at GoodGood carry our products. And that also created a new revenue channel for us. So now we're omni-channel in grocery, e-com, and the restaurants.
Well, I admire what you did, and I was an early adopter, having been familiar with the Guelph location. And I have to say, it felt like a little gift every time that box of ramen turned up at our door during the pandemic. So well done. Kris, you were in on the ground floor of this app-driven, convenience-oriented food experience. You're in Chicago, I believe, at the beginning of your career, and then now you're launching GoodGood, which kind of is somewhere in the middle between old school and new school. How did you envision this concept, and what was the thinking about consumers and their needs that went into you launching this new chain?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for better for worse, obviously the pandemic had a tremendous impact on just about every business. And for us, instead of jumping into things right away, we kind of decided to take a step back, watch how things played out, and kind of evaluate how local communities might evolve, kind of coming out, hopefully knock on wood, of the pandemic. And I think a few things became clear to us. In particular, I think cafes are really the centerpieces of communities. When we really looked at, what a community is made out of, it's a place people go every day for a coffee or to catch up with friends or family, or simply even just get out of the house during the pandemic. But there's a huge challenge that we see with cafes is that they're extremely challenging to turn profitable. I think they have really low ticket sizes generally, in the $7 range. Even though there's great margin on that, you have to drive so many customers through to be successful. And then two other things we notice is it's heavy day part ordering. So, generally in the morning and then early afternoon, and the assortment doesn't really accommodate the full day part. And so when we looked at GoodGood, we kind of said, what does the modern cafe look like? And three things that really stood out for us was one, how are we relevant all day? So how do we have an amazing assortment of coffee and pastries in the morning? How do we turn into grab and go and packaged snacks in the afternoon? And then how do we offer kind of a wine, beer, pizza type experience in the evening, and really hit all those day parts and be relevant to consumers? The second thing is leveraging technology to enhance experience and connection. How do we connect makers with consumers more intelligently? So we launched a really interesting sampling program, for instance, for makers. And then lastly, accessibility, and again, kind of piggyback on that technology component, but, how do we allow people to visit our cafe if they want to walk in and sit down and have a great coffee? How do they order ahead if they're in a rush? Or how do we get it delivered to their door in 60 minutes if, they just don't want to get off the couch that day? And so for us, the evolution of consumer options is really about accessibility. And I think that will continue to evolve day to day. For us, we think it's really focused on connecting product to consumers. How that gets done, we'll see what happens, kind of to what Matthieu mentioned. Delivery is one component of it, but I think as you see things kind of wind down with COVID, people are going to be craving that in-store experience. And so how do we leverage that ability as well? So yeah.
Quick follow-up, do you see, and I know it's early days, you only, are just launching these bricks and mortar spaces, but are you seeing the same people come back in morning, afternoon, and evening, or are they completely different customer bases?
Yeah, it's a great question. So what's exciting about the GoodGood concept is that coffee is such a high frequency product. And so, we generally see our customers 3 to 5 times a week, which is incredible. And it really gives us that retention component. And even more exciting is what we start to see is as we transition customers to digital, not only do we see them visit us in the morning or in the afternoon, but then start to take advantage of the delivery option. So generally what we see is we offer and we generally focus on emerging makers or hyperlocal makers. And so it's generally something you discover in person. It's a little risky to order something you've never tried before. It can take 60 minutes to get there. If you don't like it, you're like, crap, I just ordered this thing. I don't have anything to eat now. And so for us, we really see the experiential component of the brick and mortar locations being discovery centers. And then as consumers start to get comfortable with their products, they start to dabble into, okay, maybe I'll try this vegan option, or maybe I'll try this keto option. And then, okay, I feel really good now, I'm gonna get it delivered because I know what this product, is and what it tastes like, etc. So we're really seeing that customer shift, and our afternoon has actually become the highest driver of sales. So generally between 3 to 5 p.m. Is really where we're starting to see that growth. So it's been exciting to see consumers kind of adopt and change some of their behaviors.
Thanks, I appreciate that extra info. Matthieu, you've heard what's working here in Canada with Crafty Ramen and GoodGood. Curious if you have any observations that was there that surprised you, and also would love to hear how what's working here in Canada maybe contrasts what you see working in other parts of the world. Oh, you're on mute.
If I mute, it's better. But yeah,
not from my perspective. I'm very glad to hear your voice.
One thing which is always interesting in food is that it's a very slow-moving thing, that a trend that is created somewhere, that it will ripple everywhere in the world, but it's somehow slow, and you have these huge barriers because we've talked about amazing products. I was looking online at both cafes and ramen, and I really would like to experiment them. And I know it's not possible because I'm in France, and it's really complicated to have food delivered, etc., etc. So it's something that is still really complicated. And even in France, I can't get food that is delivered from Belgium, Germany, or Sweden. It's remained really complicated. But in the same time, what is really interesting is to see that entrepreneurs are using the same tools. It was mentioned that we talked about Shopify, how the ability to create really fast e-commerce brands is now a thing. It's something that people have to understand that it's quite new, because all these tools are not so young, so recent, but their integration, so the fact that you can use Shopify integrated with Stripe for payments, that we can integrate it with delivery platforms, is something really new, and that's happening all over the world in the same time. And more than differences, it's really similarities, because when we were talking about Ramen, I was thinking about this brand in Europe, especially in the UK, which is named Pasta Evangelist, which was acquired by Barilla last summer for a nice...
The pasta company.
For Barilla,
cool.
The pasta company, which acquired Pasta Evangelist, which were pasta company selling pastas online, so a pure direct-to-consumer brand, and they acquired it for a nice 40 million pounds. So
wow.
It shows that there is something happening, and it's almost the same everywhere, happening kind of similarity. So I think it's nice, and it also shows that at the end of the day, there is an interest, there is an exit for all these companies. So it's also, I think, something interesting to look at.
Yeah, that's a great topic for another day. What is the end game for these digitally enabled new concepts? But I was really glad to hear you mention that Shopify is, a go-to technology in other parts of the world as well. I knew it, but just to underline the fact that maybe you're aware, and maybe our members who are tuned in today are aware, but just want to underline that is a Canadian company that's really emerged as this powerhouse that has disrupted this space. So, snaps for Canada.
Yeah,
I do tend to get a little silly, so I'm not going to eat up all of the time. As a reminder for those who are viewing, if you want to go to the Q&A tab and capture your much better questions and much less, silly comments, please do. My colleague Jamil will be joining us after another question or two to pose your questions to the panel. So I would love to, just dig into something with all three of you here. So we see that consumers, they're very bullish on the convenience of delivery and the instantaneous gratification of just opening up an app and saying, I want this, and it being at their fingertips. But they also tell us that they are a little bit worried about food quality, food safety. Some of the top things consumers say that worry them about third-party delivery are whether or not the person who's picking their food up is treating it in a safe and clean manner. So technology is evolving all the time, but yet we don't seem to have, other than GPS trackers, we don't seem to have much innovation around allaying those consumer concerns. I'd love to hear from each of you about what you'd be open to investing in to help solve this consumer pain point. So, Kris, why don't I start with you this time?
Yeah, awesome. So luckily for us, we're in a little bit easier space because anything we delivered is generally packaged. So we don't have a ton of challenges as others. But I think two things that we really look at and send out to us is, these orders being digital, it's very easy to get accessible feedback from consumers. They can leave smiley faces, sad faces, reviews, etc. So we heavily skew on the side of the consumer to understand, what was the delivery experience like? Did the food arrive cold? Was it left outside, not properly packaged? So I think that's a big part of it. The second thing is, and this isn't as much on the technology side, but it's truly accountability and training. I think you have to work really, really closely with either your team that's doing the delivery or your third-party partner to take on that accountability and really leverage that feedback and information that you're getting back from the consumer. And Khalil will probably touch on this, but When you're delivering hot food, I think there's been some innovation around food sensors, specifically around the temperature of the product and when it's arriving and things that relate to that. But I think this is without a doubt the biggest challenge within the space is, just slipping a sticker over the bag that said like, no one tampered with this is not going to be enough at the end of the day. And so I think you're going to see a lot of innovation here, especially as this category continues to grow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. You see some of those little, almost like little wagon robots on some city streets and things like that. And, I saw one tip over on Queen Street last summer. So that obviously hasn't been completely figured out yet either. Khalil, you deliver a product that has to be cold. And there's proteins and other things often in your kits that that there are food safety concerns if the temperature isn't well maintained and monitored. So what do you see ahead? What would solve your problems that some of the innovators listening today might be able to invent to make your life easier?
Yeah, so we obviously have the hot component as well with the third-party apps.
I guess
which
you
has
do. I hadn't thought of that.
Always been a challenge. But on the e-commerce side, as Matthieu mentioned, the barriers to food delivery, food safety is definitely one of those on the cold shipping side. So there are I think it's a combination of supply chain transparency as well as customer expectations. So I think you can use really rich delivery experiences, texting the customer the morning of their delivery with a tracking link and a time window. So we ensure that they're home to receive that product and put it in their fridge or freezer. Currently, we ship fresh meal kits, and we're actually continuing to pivot to a frozen experience. It's much easier to keep something frozen at -20 for a longer period of time than at a fresh temperature around 0 degrees. And some other things that and from a consumer perspective, when we ship something that's frozen, if they can't consume it right away, they'll put it in their freezer for another day versus giving them something with a short shelf life. So it allows us to scale and expand the brand a lot easier on the frozen aspect versus the fresh. And we also leverage technology and intermittent testing that Kris mentioned. So we put temperature sensors in our boxes, and we're able to track the journey of that box and the temperature along the whole journey. And we also do, similar to restaurants, some food safety audits. So we will ship boxes to food safety representatives who will then open that and give us a report on temperature. Because food safety is arguably the biggest organizational risk to any food business. And if you've ever done a food safety course, they love to tell you all the different horror stories of brands who have failed. So I think you're right. I think you're right in that we're going to continue to see some technology emerging in this side of the business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it is interesting, and of course, coming out of a pandemic, everyone is more aware of health and germs and illness than ever before. Matthieu, you may have some comments directly on what Kris and Khalil said, but I'd love to hear a little bit about deal flow. Our food safety focused companies and food logistic companies, are they getting the attention of investors? Are they as interesting as the actual, concepts, the consumer facing concepts? And, I'm not sure if you can answer that precisely. I know just kind of, popped in my head. We didn't talk about this earlier. So if you want to tell me I cannot say, then that's fine.
Yeah. What I'd say first to go back on the initial question is that I would say it's an issue that is really different from country to country because it really depends on the networks to deliver fresh food that you have. To give you a very European example, in the UK, you have multiple food fresh food carriers that are able to deliver fresh food at your door, and then it creates competition, and service is pretty good. In France, you just have one, and which is almost a public service because they are doing that at a loss, and no one wants to launch a new competitor. So it gets really complicated because service is bad, but it's a delivery service that is bad. But it's your brand that gets delivered, and consumers are complaining to your brand, not to your. I would say to the delivery side of the job. So it's really complicated, and I think startups are getting more and more creative in ways where they are using what tools they have on the countryside, in suburbs, but trying to use third-party delivery platforms for city centers where you can have really good experiences with SMS texting, just neighbors delivery. So you have a lot of options, and entrepreneurs can get creative in city centers, and then they have to rely on the network they have outside of cities. And for your second part of your question on funding, we see more and more funding into this space. I would say it's little in terms of amounts because it's about startups developing B2B companies with minimal amount of R&D and disruption. So they are raising little amounts just to kick off new B2B businesses that are not as cash consuming than food delivery startups. So we are talking about startup delivery raising 1 to 10 or 20 million. So it's not really huge, I would say, but you see a lot of innovation. And if you're interested in space, you have a couple of really interesting companies in Estonia, the very tiny country in northeast of Europe, working in space. So we kind of see interesting stuff.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for taking that unplanned question. Speaking of unplanned questions, I am going to welcome my colleague, Director of Communications for CFIN, Jamil Karim. He's been combing through the viewer questions, and I think he has probably a couple of things to ask the panel. I know I still have a few things that I've follow-ons, but I'll let Jamil take up some of the air for a few minutes.
Appreciate it, Dana, and thanks to all of our panelists for a great discussion. We did have an audience question come in from Maxime. He wants to know, the shift to online platforms for food access and delivery seem to be amplifying the food security disparities between rural and urban communities in Canada, since most platforms aren't profitable or suitable for low density populations. So she wants to know, how do we counter this trend or put in place guardrails as communities to ensure we improve food security rather than worsen the situation?
Wow, that's such an interesting question. Thank you so much for that. Kris, you're mostly working in an urban space. You may have some thoughts on this, but it seems like this question really rests with you, Khalil, who I know I live in a rural area and have your kits delivered. So would you like to tackle this one?
Yeah, I can kick it off. What's really interesting about our business is the smaller markets that we are able to reach today are most popular. They're the markets without as many options for dining out that you would traditionally see in an urban market. So for us, we have a very big goal to reach as many rural, low population areas of Ontario that we can. Because we do see the feedback from our customers, they're just over the moon that they're able to get a ramen product sent to their door that they can make at home in their kitchen. And the challenge definitely is the cost of delivery, to that point of when you have delivery going to a very dense area, it is much more economical than it is in a rural area. So right now for us, all those costs are blended. And if we can continue to end up in a good spot, blending those costs between rural and urban, and we can continue to grow. What we don't want to get to a point from our earlier conversation where we're just passing on this huge delivery fee to those customers, which would then lead to that disparity between the two markets.
Yes, that's interesting, and I guess that's as I think through your answer, there's a brand opportunity there for you to get some very loyal customers who normally would be underserved, I suppose.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, pretty cool. Kris, Matthieu, do you have anything to add? No pressure if you feel like that question's been handled well by Khalil and is fully packaged for our audience.
Nothing much on the side.
Okay, fair enough.
And no, I think you nailed it.
I thought you did too. I learned some good things there. Jamil, do you have any other questions right now?
Yeah, we got one more from Roger. Roger wants to know your thoughts on how these services solve the problem of local food stability and the challenges of commodity pricing and logistics currently playing out from COVID-19.
So if I'm hearing Roger's question correctly, it sounds like he's asking a couple of things there. Why don't we address the first part about pricing? Particularly when you're doing something that contains fresh ingredients and commodities like meat, Khalil. You probably see on a week-to-week basis that your margins are quite different. Am I correct? Is that happening in your operation?
Yeah, most definitely. It's the biggest challenge over the past year is the constant increase in pricing, and we're seeing it on a business level, on a consumer level. We all see the gas prices and inflation, and we read it in the news. What worries us is there's only so much price increase we can take in 1 year to pass on to the customer. So how much can we absorb versus how much can we pass on to the customer becomes this constant balancing act before we get too expensive and lose our customer base. So that's the balancing act that we're playing today. And we're not at the size yet where we can spot buy commodities and buy all of our pork for Q2 and Q3. So we do have to play with the market fluctuations.
Mm-hmm. So Kris, in your model, a cafe, it's a little different. Sometimes, if the pizza goes up by 25 cents because tomatoes or cheese or something is been affected, people don't always notice it. But yesterday we heard that inflation in Canada was 5.7%. How are you hedging as you build out GoodGood against these growing pressures?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a huge challenge in something that will continue to evolve. I think we're really focused on just trying to be as creative as possible. I think in our space, we have some flexibility because we're not necessarily known for one specific product or a line of products. Mm-hmm. We really want to hold the bar on, delivering a high quality experience to the consumer. And if we find that pizzas are having all sorts of supply chain issues and the inflation is, affecting tomatoes, we will probably start to look at what other offerings do we feel pair well with wine that consumers would enjoy and be able to deliver that. So I think we're lucky in that capacity is we have a lot of flexibility in terms of what we are providing the consumers. But I think, it's a huge challenge. As Khalil mentioned, there's only so much that you can pass on. And even more so, you want to hold the bar of your consistency and quality of the product that you're providing your customers. And so, you don't want to degrade the quality of beef that you're using because that degrades your brand. And so I think it kind of goes back to it's a very fluid situation across the board, not only just, what's going on with the delivery component, but also everything else going on in the world. And so I think it's kind of like play it week by week and get creative as possible. And, maybe introduce new dishes with different ingredients that still maintain your brand quality, but allow your margins to kind of survive and withstand through this time.
Thank you. Jamil, would you mind going back? Because that was sort of a two-part question. We addressed the second part. Can you remind us of what the first part was? A little bit more about, I think, food security, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, let me read the question out again and make sure we have it properly. It's from Roger, and he wants to know everyone's thoughts on how these services solve the problem of local food stability and the challenges of commodity pricing and logistics currently playing out from COVID-19?
Yeah, now it's an interesting question because, how much of that is the role of business owners is an interesting question too. And where does that responsibility ultimately rest? So I open it up to anyone who has a comment on that part of the question. Yeah, no, it's a tough one. And it's interesting that we're not there on it. And I think that behooves all of us to think more deeply about where these lines are. And, and there's probably a brand opportunity there. Don't you guys think for somebody to come out with a, maybe a B Corp style business that approaches some of those insights? I'm not sure how much of that is happening in the delivery space, but certainly we've seen some really interesting food concepts adopt B Corp, like there's a chain of wonderful restaurants. They're actually not a chain, all the restaurants are different. So there's a restaurant group in Guelph that I'm aware of that has fantastic food, fantastic service, and is a certified B Corp. Of course, there's the big brands as well, like the Ben & Jerry's and in clothing, the Patagonias, etc. It's interesting how we need to always take a step back and think about this this macro type of set of needs that consumers have and what they care about. That's a really interesting question. Thank you so much for that. Before we take any more questions or any ideas, how are companies, Matthieu, approaching cybersecurity in this day and age where so much depends on your apps and your technology? Is cybersecurity something that should be, a department of these new types of companies?
I would say in food, cybersecurity is not really a concern right now. People are not really too much interested into the space. I would say that a few years ago in many other areas. So I think everyone is waiting for the first big issue in the space, but
that terrifies me to hear you say that. Like that is that's the wrong strategy.
But we don't have a big issue there. And basically at the end of the day, companies have what your credit cards and what you've bought. So it's this idea that it's not too big, but I would say the biggest threat would be, and I think it's taken care of, but it's not my field, in big food corporations, when you have a big plant where you can just by slightly moving some parameter and create a disturbation into the production process. And I don't know really well how this company are equipped to that. I would say that they are not, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting perspective. Khalil and Kris, have I just freaked you out? Are you frantically texting your ops crew and asking them what you've got in place, or maybe you have fantastic plans? How do you think about? It's the same, I suppose, as when you have your bricks and mortar locations, you make sure that the door is locked at night. So, does this give you pause? This topic of cybersecurity?
It's definitely something that we think about and we talk about when we look through different organizational and reputational risks. The good part about going back to leveraging partners like Shopify or a Square for online ordering is all of that customer data, credit card information is stored with them. So our team has no access to anybody's customer information. So if there was an attack on Crafty Ramen per se, to try and get a batch of credit card numbers, they're actually attacking a Shopify or a Square, who are probably a lot better fit than we are today. to protect that type of information. So being able to leverage great technology partners puts our mind at ease today, but it's definitely something that is top of mind and will continue to be for the future.
Interesting.
Yeah, I would just
Yes,
add on,
yeah, go ahead.
I think similar to what Khalil was saying, a lot of the third parties have made it quite a bit easier, whether it be Stripe or Square or Shopify for entrepreneurs to get online and start selling their products securely and safely. But yeah, at Ritual, I mean, we were very fortunate. We raised a significant amount of money to build the business, and we have a massive engineering team and security team. And it's not just fraud in terms of attacking customers' information and such, but also within the business. A lot of companies give out promo codes, right? And it's super easy just to change your email address or change your phone number through Google Authenticator and get $20 off every single time you order, which is very difficult on the business. And so I think it's great in the sense of when you're kind of getting started and reliant on these other platforms, they make it very easy for you to avoid those situations. And then when you're ready to kind of scale your business and bring it in-house and kind of build out your own custom platforms and tooling, you've gone through that experience, kind of what the bar should be, and then you're able to continue to evolve it. So it's definitely an interesting space from that perspective.
It really is, and it's never been more top of mind than the last couple of years. So, Jamil, do you have another question for the panel that you'd like to pose?
I do. Questions are coming in fast and furious here, so I'm going to pick one. This one's from Matthieu, and it's about personalization, which I know is a specialty of Matthieu. The question is, food tech companies are investing millions in getting ingredients and prepared meals faster to consumers. But do you think there's an opportunity where we can provide an option for people and they're not forced to cook and clean each week and still able to eat personalized meals cooked for them in their own homes?
That is a good question. So Matthieu's team put out a very good newsletter about, I don't know, a month or 5 weeks ago about personalization and the future of nutrition and menu planning and that kind of thing. So I think Jamil is absolutely correct. Matthieu, we'll go to you first on this one.
Yeah, personalization is a really interesting space, but I would say the biggest challenge with personalization is not to create personalized meals, because we know how to cook different meals for different people, but what we don't really know is what do you need. So when we talk about personalization, the issue is still there. So what do you need actually? So, and for that, basically the science is not there. So we have a lot of stuff: genomics, microbiome, glucose test, blood test, everything that you want to test can provide you some results, some insights. But at the end of the day, we don't know what do you need. So that's the first part. So we can't really do some personalized meals, or it's, I would say, wrong promise from the company side to say it. But what I would say is that you can do cooked meals, which is something that we see a lot both in the US and in Europe. An evolution from the meal kit, where you get ingredients pre-sized just to cook your meals, to already cooked meals, but not delivered to fresh for the day, but delivered frozen often for the week. So that's something that we see a lot. And I think that's the first, I would say, step toward personalization, because we are building the infrastructure that enables us to, at the end of the day, create personalized meals. But in terms of real personalization, we are so far away from it. And I think at least for 50% of people, personalization is still having a bottle of Coke with their name on it. And I'm not sure we have something more to do with personalization right now.
No, I would agree with you from all of the research I've done. Khalil, you and your team, the part of the experience of a Crafty ramen kit is putting it together. But you have a really interesting online Instagram campaign with the hashtag #MyNudes, not nudes, NUDES, for those of you whose minds are in the gutter, but NOODS as in noodles. You encourage people to take pictures of how they customized and personalized your kits, and then you give them free ramen. Do you see that getting a lot of uptake, or how is the hashtag performing for you?
Yeah, it's been doing really well, and people love to share their creations and the experience at home. And we're personalization in our world. We're going to take it a step further. So today we have the meal kit, and you can make that at home, which is the cook and eat segment of the market. We have a heat and eat product coming out later this year. So for that super convenient customer who doesn't want pots and pans and all the dishes, they'll be able to have our product ready in under 10 minutes with the same quality and same ingredients as we have today. And then we also have our blog launching where we'll put out different ramen recipes. So if you really want to sit at home in the kitchen for 12 hours or put a pot on for 12 hours and make your own broth at home, you'll be able to do that. So in order to achieve our big, hairy, audacious goal of becoming the household name for ramen across North America, we need to be able to really insert ourselves in those different segments. And then the restaurants, obviously, that's a whole different experience if you want to go in and eat. So that's how we're taking personalization at Crafty Ramen.
Interesting. Kris, I know that your concept lend itself to the personalization per se, but you're a very experienced entrepreneur and a lot of interesting people working in this space. Do you have any comments to add, or even just speaking to yourself personally? Do you crave more personalization?
Yeah, so I think you're going to see a huge investment from us at GoodGood in personalization, and I think this really speaks to connecting makers with communities. I won't go too far into it, but we're launching a mobile app in the next month or so, and I think one challenge that we found from makers is sampling is super critical to the success of their business, but it's also a double-edged sword in terms of you're handing out product to people you don't know. And if you're a spicy hot sauce company and you're giving someone a bottle that doesn't like hot sauce, that's probably not a customer that's ever going to purchase your product. And you just spent X dollars on distributing that product to them. So specifically when it comes to sampling mechanism, we're actually going to have a tool within our platform that feeds customers that have our mobile app different samples that they can redeem on every visit. Based off of their preferences. So you can say, I like spicy food, I'm vegan, and I hate chocolate. And we will start to surface you different products that you might be interested in. And then we can go back and take that to makers and say, you distributed 150 products to this targeted subset of customers. Here's the return rate of those customers and kind of what your ROI looks like on that investment. So it's
amazing
a big
shopper.
part of our business. Yeah. So
amazing shopper insights. That's great. And I think that's a well-developed concept in the makeup world. Those of us who buy online beauty products, we've seen that for some time. So it's great that you're adopting these concepts from other consumer segments.
Yeah, Sephora's world-class in it. So
exactly. You know exactly who I was talking about,
exactly.
Right?
Exactly what
so we have had an amazing conversation. I have learned a lot from all of you, which is it says quite a bit because I've talked to all of you in advance of this session. So thank you for disclosing and sharing so many of your insights and your best practices. Very grateful to have you at our first CFIN members only experience. This is one for the history books. When CFIN has its 25th anniversary, I'll expect all of you to turn up, and we'll show some of this tape, and we'll marvel at how young and beautiful we were. But I'm going to say goodbye now, and I'm going to throw to Jamil, who's got a few messages for our audience.
Hey everyone, thanks again for joining us today. As Dana mentioned, this is a rather historic event for all of us. If you're looking to keep up with everything that's going on with CFIN, follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn. You'll be the first to know about upcoming events and new programs. And spoiler alert, there'll be news on both of these in the coming months. So Twitter and LinkedIn, and don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'd love to hear from our members.